As always, it is good to be in the house of the Lord. I love Sundays, even though I have to work on Sundays. I like them anyway. Well, for 3 weeks prior to our homecoming celebration, I was in a series about the Great Commission and how we as Christians need to be faithful to carry on the mission that Jesus began when he was on this earth. On September 13th, I discussed the rise of the nuns. I'm not talking about the N-U-N-S. I'm talking about the N-O-N-E-S, the nuns. Those who, when surveyed, check no religious affiliation. And it's the fastest, quote-unquote, religious group in America. They're actually a non-religious group, but they are growing rapidly. They're just not interested in church. So chances are they're not going to come. I suggested that we might need to adjust our approach to evangelism rather than expecting unbelievers to come to us. It's become obvious that for some, we must go to them. And we're trying to do that. We're trying to think outside of the box in our Wranglers for Christ and Ironworks and our Hispanic ministries and our work at the Flick this weekend, and we're trying to do better. I illustrated people's view of church, if you recall, as 3 different types of ships. The first ship, of course, was the cruise liner. There are some people who approach church like a cruise liner, and their main concern is, does it fit my needs? Does this particular church have a nursery? Do they have children's church? Do they have good music? Do they have a short-winded preacher? Those kinds of things. They're basically self-centered. They look at church as a cruise liner. Then there are those that look at church as a battleship, a much better approach than the cruise liner, of course. But for these people, it's the church institution that does most of the fighting. They see programs, services, and ministries as the primary instrument of mission. There's more focus on the church gathered in their various meetings and classes and studies and so on than the church scattered. I suggested that probably a better metaphor for the church would actually be an aircraft carrier. Because an aircraft carrier equips the planes to go out and take the battle to the enemy. And you guys are docked today. You're on the aircraft carrier right now. And when you walk out that door, then it'll be your responsibility to take the battle to the enemy, wherever that might be. And hopefully, when you gather at Banner Church on Sunday morning, not only do you come to worship God and fellowship with your brothers and sisters in Christ and learn and all of those things, but hopefully you'll be refueled, repaired, refocused, re-energized, re-equipped, and re-encouraged to take the battle to the enemy Monday through Saturday. And I feel like that for me personally that happens. And if it's not happening for you, let us know. We want that to take place, because the Bible tells us to not forsake the assembling of ourselves together, but to encourage one another, empower one another, equip one another, spur one another on to good works. And we hope that's what happens when you assemble here. John 20, verse 21, Jesus said, "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." So I think the aircraft carrier is probably the best metaphor there for the church. On September 20th, I suggested that we give ourselves completely to the cause of Christ. You remember the illustration of the Dust Bowl farmers of the 1920s? They had a decision to make. Am I going to plant these seeds in hope of a harvest, or am I going to consume them upon myself in the here and now? And we have those same choices to make each and every day. Am I going to view my blessings, my resources, my talents, my opportunities, my relationships? Am I going to view those as opportunities that I can plant seed into the kingdom? Or am I going to heap it up for myself and consume it in fun and games and enjoyment and pleasure? In John 12:24, Jesus said, I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. So we can consume upon ourselves, or we can plant and invest. God grows his kingdom as we take our hands off of what he's given us, die to control of it, and plant it, invest it into the world. That's what we're doing this weekend down at the Flick. That's what we did last night, as we invited a particular cultural group, perhaps, to join us. We reached out to Wranglers for Christ. That's what we do in our Hispanic ministries. That's what we're doing here. We're planning. We're investing. So the question that we all face is, what kind of seeds do I have in my hands? What kind of opportunities will I have tomorrow to actually invest and sow into the kingdom? If we looked at every one of our blessings as kingdom seeds, how many are we planting and how many are we keeping hoarded up for ourselves? Romans 1:14, Paul said, I'm obligated. I'm obligated. I'm a debtor to the grace of God. I owe those who have not heard the message. David Platt said, every saved person this side of heaven owes the gospel to every unsaved person this side of hell. I like that. Then on September 27th, I used 2 balloons, one filled with air, one filled with helium, to illustrate that good intentions are not good enough to keep us afloat. We need the indwelling presence of the Holy Spirit. I don't know about you, but I have lots of good intentions. But I need something to help me sustain those intentions, and that Holy Spirit comes on board to help me do that. You fill a heart with human effort and good intentions, it probably won't last. I find that out on January 2nd every year. I have good intentions on January 1st, but those good intentions usually don't last. Fill a heart with the Spirit of God, and there will be a passion for the lost and a commitment to the mission. Acts 1:8 says, when the Holy Spirit comes, you'll be witnesses. Paul said in Romans 9:1 and 2, I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart, for I could wish that I myself were cursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers. That anguish will motivate us. When we have the same attitude toward the lost and the hurting and the dying and the hungry and the naked that Jesus had, it will compel us, according to 2 Corinthians 5:14, to do something. 2 Corinthians 5:8 says, God reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. Jesus was all about reconciling sinful man back to a holy God. And when he went away, he entrusted that ministry to us. So, that's the review of the last 3 messages in the series. Today I'd like to expand upon that. I want to talk about attractional evangelism and missional evangelism. Attractional and missional. By attractional, I mean ministries designed so that unbelievers will be drawn into them and hear the gospel. You might call it come and see evangelism. Now, for the last 3 weeks, I've been stressing missional. I've been stressing going out to the people, taking the message into the world. I don't want to imply for a minute that there's no place for attractional evangelism, that there's no place for someone to say, hey, why don't you come and go to church with me? Hey, we're having a class fellowship Friday night. Why don't you come with me? There is now and there will always be a place for attractional evangelism. Come and see. Then by missional evangelism, I mean equipping Christians to carry the gospel to unbelievers outside the church. You might call that go and tell evangelism. We have come and see evangelism, and we have go and tell evangelism. And you'll find that they work together many times, and they overlap. In fact, many times in Scripture we'll see attractional of evangelism. The question is, should we use missional evangelism or attractional evangelism? And the answer is yes. Should we use missional evangelism or attractional? The answer is yes. It's not either or. It's both and. We shouldn't choose one or the other. The church in America has been using primarily a attractional approach for decades. We need to shift the balance. More time and effort should be directed to taking the gospel outside these walls. Remember, the weekdays are just as important as the weekend, if not more so. We don't want to focus all of our attention upon the gathering on Sunday morning. We want to focus more attention upon the scattering on Monday morning and Tuesday morning and throughout the week. Now, I'm not against large Sunday numbers. I'm all for it. Believe me, I'm all for it. Now, there are some people who try to appear really pious. Oh, it's not about numbers. We're not about numbers. How many did you have in church? Oh, it's not about numbers. Oh, that sounds real pious, doesn't it? Most people that say it's not about numbers don't have very many numbers. Numbers are important. Why do I say numbers are important? Well, the New Testament writers celebrated numbers greatly. How many people did Jesus feed? How many disciples did he call? How many people were in the upper room? They told us about large crowds, and many times they told us how many people were in those crowds. Somebody had to take the time to count. 5,000, that's a long ways to count, isn't it? How many people were saved on the day of Pentecost? We know those numbers because someone took the time to count and record them for us. So evidently numbers are important. Twice Luke celebrated the number of baptisms on a given day. The good shepherd counted his sheep, and guess what? One was missing. And he went out and got him. So numbers are important. It's not all about numbers, but numbers are important. In fact, it's the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. There's a book in the Bible entitled Numbers. So don't tell me it's not about numbers. Numbers are not important for numbers' sake. They're not important so that they'll look good on your attendance board, which we no longer have. They're not important so that you can report them at the end of the year and look good in front of all the other preachers. Numbers are important because each number represents a what? A person. It's something that's measurable. It's something we can count. Numbers represent people. We don't want to overemphasize numbers, but we don't want to underemphasize them either. Our attendance on Sunday is only the beginning. What happens during the week tells us who is simply an attender and who is a true disciple. In the culture of today, the church service, the gathering of believers, is becoming less effective in reaching unchurched people. Fewer and fewer lost people just mosey into our service these days. So equipping disciples to reproduce outside the church during the week is becoming more and more important. Missional and attractional. Our church services are kind of like a huddle where instructions are given for how the players run the mission throughout the week. Has anybody been to a football game this week? Has anybody watched a football game this week on TV? All right, we won't talk about that. Wouldn't it be silly for the quarterback to call a play and then everybody says, and then they go sit down on the bench? And then they get up and they call another play, and then everybody goes and sits down, and this happens. What do you expect when the quarterback calls a play? Don't you expect the players to run the play? And that's what we do on Sunday morning. We equip, we inform, we empower, we do all the things, hopefully, that are supposed to happen when believers come together, and then we leave the doors and we go run the play. That's the idea. Earlier I used the words attractional and missional. to distinguish between an evangelism model that seeks to draw people to church events and one that seeks to equip ordinary members to carry the gospel outside these walls. This morning I'd like to look at attractional for just a few minutes. That's probably all I'll get to today. Come and see evangelism. Matthew 5:14 through 16. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." People out there can't see faith. They can't see grace. They can't see love. They can't see mercy. They can't see any of those things, but they can see the results of it. And that's why Jesus instructs his disciples to go out and let people see your good deeds. Not so that they can glorify you, but so that they can glorify him. Attractional. The church is to conduct itself with such dignity, grace, and charity that our presence in any community is like a light drawing those who are wandering in darkness. As they come close and observe its good works, they will glorify our Father. I had a really bad image in my mind when I was writing that. Does anybody remember bug zappers? The bugs come in and all of a sudden, zzz, zzz, and do they still have those? I haven't seen one in a long time. Okay, you still got one. Okay. Sometimes, too many times, the church is a bug zapper. I mean, we let our lights shine, and then people are drawn into our fellowship, and then all of a sudden they get zapped. People aren't friendly. They're mean. They do something that turns people off, and they say, well, I'll never go back there. Don't be a bug zapper. Not that people out there are bugs. Don't get that image at all. But a light should draw people in, and then when they come in, they ought to feel warmth and acceptance. They shouldn't feel an electric shock. 1 Peter 2, verse 9 says, "You are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light." Dear friends, I urge you as aliens and strangers in the world to live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God. There it is again. He goes on to say in chapter 3, always be prepared to give an answer. He's indicating that if you live such a good life in front of the pagans, that they're going to stand up and take notice and wonder what it is about you that's so different from everyone else that they hang with. And at that point in time, it says you need to be ready. Don't let them blindside you. Be ready. Have your story ready when they say, what is the reason? Be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. Oh, I guess I don't know, just must be my personality, I guess. I guess I was raised right. I guess I'm just a pretty good person. No, that's not the reason. The difference between you and them is Jesus Christ. And they need to know that. Do it with gentleness and respect, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. So in a sense that's attractional evangelism, but in a sense it's missional, because you have to go out among the people so that you can take your light to the darkness. Misty, I think it's about time to hear that song again. Run to the darkness. How are they going to see your light if you're not out among them? So that is both missional and attractional. People should see and hear about what God is doing through his people and be drawn to him through us. On the day of Pentecost, people gathered to see what in the world was going on. What is going on with these people? They must be drunk. Nope, it's too early in the day. They're not drunk. Peter said, I thought you'd never ask. This is what the Joel was talking about. This is it, right here. And he proceeded to share the message. People see, wonder, attend, and inquire. Jesus and the apostles attracted large crowds because of the way they lived out in the community. Amazement led to attraction. Attraction led to observation. Observation led to conversion. Not only should we live and worship in ways that draw people in, but we should also do everything we can to make our worship and message intelligible to them. I had never thought about this concept before until I was studying for this message. But do you realize that God commanded Israel to create a court for the Gentiles so that they could observe the Israelites in worship? Jesus got angry when the Jewish leaders cluttered up the court of the Gentiles with conveniences for the Jews. Did you ever think about that? I've never heard any harsher words out of Jesus' mouth through his word, the Bible, than when he encountered this obstruction in the court of the Gentiles. They had consumed the only space that the Gentiles had to encounter God with their own convenience. You know, we need to examine ourselves from time to time. I was raised in the church. I've been in the church all my life. I don't know anything different. Is there anything in what we do, in our traditions, in our procedures, in anything that would be an obstacle between the unsaved and our God? We need to examine those things. We need to think about those things. I don't want to clutter up the court of the Gentiles. Jesus said in Mark 11:17, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations." Do we make all people feel welcome? Or only those that fit a particular stereotype? They had transformed the only access point for the Gentiles into comfort and convenience for those who were already in. Having a place to change money and buy and sell sacrifices so close to the altar was very convenient. I mean, after all, these people had traveled a long ways. You don't want to have to carry a sacrifice. We'll just wait till we get to the temple and we'll buy one there. That'd be easy. But it got in the way of the Gentiles. And it commercialized the house of God. Why would we assume that Jesus feels any differently today when we don't think about those outside these walls in our preaching and our music and our language and our traditions and our programs? By not thinking of the outsiders whom God is drawing to himself, we may be creating roadblocks. I've said many times for many years that our job is, in essence, the same as the job of John the Baptist. We're here to make straight the way of the Lord. And what that meant literally was when word got out that a king was coming to Split Log, we get all the bulldozers and all the road equipment that we could possibly find, and we'd level out all the hills and valleys. We'd straighten the road out, and we'd fill in all the potholes and make it as smooth as we possibly could because the king was coming. Make straight the way of the Lord. And you know, as Christians, that's kind of what we're here for. We're here to make people more receptive to the gospel through the way that we live our lives. We're salt. We ought to make people thirsty. We're to straighten out the way of the Lord. We're not supposed to make it more crooked. We're not supposed to put obstacles in the way. We're trying to remove those obstacles so that unbelievers can come to Jesus. A lot of churches never even consider change because they care more about their own preferences than they do about making the gospel accessible to the outside world. Kind of like the guy that was against purchasing a chandelier for the foyer. You've heard that story. We ain't having no chandelier. Not as long as I'm on this board. Besides, if we got one, who'd play it? What we need is a fancy light fixture. Those kind of attitudes, those are what kill a church. We've never done it that way before. We've never done it that way before. 7 last words of a dying church. We need to keep our mission ever before us. Why are we here? Who are we trying to reach? People care more about holding on to their traditions than they do about reaching their own grandchildren. Well, we ain't having any of that rock music in here. That sounds like rock music to me. We can't have that. Ain't no such thing as Christian rock. Have you heard things like that? One evidence of God's Spirit at work in a church is when seasoned members begin to put their preferences aside in order to reach the next generation. I've heard it on our very board. I've heard these very words. Well, this is what I would prefer, but I want what's best for the church. I want what's best for our young people. I'm here to stay. I can deal with it. I like hymns, but if the young people, I'm off. Let me give you an example. I read it in a book this week. I thought it was such a perfect example of what I'm trying to say. I'll probably close with this. Maybe. Don't hold me to it. Oh, this is a Pastor J.D. Greer. About a month after I became pastor at the Summit Church, we found a set of handbells in the storage closet. We thought that if we sold them, we could have some money to buy some newer musical equipment. Specifically, we wanted to get a couple of electric guitars. A few weeks later, a sweet lady who'd been a member of our church since the 1960s approached me telling me she had heard about our plans and asking what we would do with the money. We hadn't told anyone what our plans were, and when she asked me that, my heart stopped. This lady loved worship, but she was more of the organs, bells, and horns persuasion than the drums, guitars, and rhythm loop. I stuttered out, we plan to buy electric guitars. She said, my mother, who died a few years ago, donated the money to purchase those handbells, which I had not known. Why was no one going to check with me about this? Silence. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. I made vows and promises to God. After a couple of long, awkward seconds, I said to her, well, don't you think your mom in heaven would be glad to see us using instruments that would help us reach this next generation, including her grandkids and their friends? She thought about that for a second and then said, well, yes, I suppose my mom would be happy with that. She requested we not sell the handbells, but donate them to another church, which we gladly did. Yet she did not resist seeing them go, and she did not leave our church when we shifted our worship style to a more contemporary one. Today, over 2,000 college students attend our church each weekend because of the selflessness of this woman and many others. Our church is reaching a whole new generation. Isn't that a beautiful story? And the thing about it is, I've had that story happen time and time again in our church. And I believe that's one of the reasons that we've been able to do what we've been able to do at Banner Church, is because the older generation cared more about advancing the kingdom of God than their own preferences and traditions and sacred cows. I just think they deserve a round of applause for that. Most of them are now in heaven. And we are reaping the benefits of their attitude, their Christ-like attitude. I think I'm going to close with that story today. And Lord willing, next week we'll talk a little bit more about missional evangelism. Shall we stand? Father, we thank you so much for our heritage. We thank you so much for our church and those